If you're looking for an easy, affordable study abroad environment as an international student, but haven't figured out a city yet, this one is for you. Today, we are going to discuss a city that's home for thousands of international students and 4 universities. The city offers year-round sunshine, world-class education, and a vibrant arts and culture scene. The city we are talking over here is Perth, one of the best cities to live in the world. It's consistently ranking high in the world top cities for stability, healthcare, culture, environment, education, and infrastructure. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ULTV Study Abroad 101. I'm Shefali Srivastav, Marketing and Communication Manager at University Living. If you're looking to live, learn, launch a career in Perth, just because the things that I mentioned, this is the right place to be here. We are joined by Ryan Whiddett, Student Success Manager from StudyPerth. StudyPerth is a place that provides leadership role in building and promoting the value of international education in Western Australia. Hi, Ryan, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Perth.
No, my pleasure. Really excited to talk about our great city.
It is. I wasn't aware myself before I started researching for this project. And when I researched, I found that Perth is a place, if somebody likes to, it's an underdog, I'll say. If you want to live at a place with calm, quiet, and still successful, you can achieve all the things that you need for a good life, then Perth is your city.
Definitely. So, yeah. I tend to say that it's got all the things that you need, but in a relaxed sort of lifestyle at the same time. So you get the sort of best of both worlds.
Right. It's a relaxed kind of style and you get the best of all the comforts. True to that.
That's right.
Now, before we dive into the whole conversation and before you've already shared little light on Perth, if you can just walk through how the lifestyle at Perth is for an international student, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. So Perth is +8 in terms of timing worldwide. So I like to think of Perth as being really connected. I can have conversations with nearly anyone in the world and they're not too far in time difference. Even to what we're talking now, the time difference isn't too far. The lifestyle in Perth, I've got a really nice background behind me that gives you a nice image of our city skyline. So as you'll see, very clear skies, so very good weather. Today, where I am, it's just under 30 degrees at the moment in the heart of summer. So it's really warm. It's a really beautiful city in terms of there's lots of nature and parklands, and students get to experience that. So our university campuses tend to be filled with parklands and really open spaces where you live in, whether it's in the heart of the city and you're in an apartment building, there's still going to be lots of open space. So that's really the lifestyle that you get in Perth as an international student. It's about space, but having access to, big corporates, big business as well. So you get a really pretty city, but all the career opportunities and all the exciting opportunities that come from being in a big city, because Perth is a big capital city as well.
Right. Great. Ryan, you have explained and you in a very detailed, like I also feel like that I'm sitting right now in Perth, and you mentioned it pretty well that the time difference with respect to the other parts of the world is nearly on a regular basis. And especially for anyone who's coming from Asia and doesn't want a lot of cold and snow, then I believe Australia and Perth is the place for that.
Definitely. Now, I guess that's a point of difference as well, is that it does not snow in Western Australia. I think we have one little mountain about 4 hours south of Perth, and you may get snow once every sort of 5 years, but otherwise it doesn't get cold enough. So it's if you don't like the cold, definitely a place to visit.
That's nice. Now we want to understand how, of course, I've talked about StudyPerth. You guys have explained it well on your website as well, that you guys walk through with the students in their whole journey when they are planning for their, study abroad journey in Perth. What exactly StudyPerth does for our viewers, and how you guys help students, what kind of various, steps of services that you offer for students, because there are a number of services that are listed on your website. Even I got confused that you help us with the career part, also you help them with the ambassador, you help them with multiple things. So in a nutshell, if I ask you what StudyPerth is, what would be your answer?
Yeah, sure. So StudyPerth it's a government-funded organisation, so we're supported by the West Australian government. Our role really is two key things, I guess, for a student perspective is one, to tell you about Perth, to tell you all the things you need to know to choose us as a city that you come to study in. And the second part, which is the part that I'm responsible for at StudyPerth, is to make sure that when you arrive here, you have the best experience possible. So you come to know Perth as the greatest place to study, and you tell your family and friends that, yes, I made the right decision. Perth was the best place to study. And there's lots of things, as you mentioned, that we do to make sure that it is the best place to study.
Right, right. Great, great. So what motivated Study Perth? Like, what is the story behind it? There's always a great product has a great story behind. So what motivated Study Perth to come into picture?
So StudyPerth started under a different name, I think in 1990, and it was actually the universities in Perth coming together saying, hey, there's groups of international students that are choosing Perth to study. We need an organisation that really looks after them and represents international students. So that's how it started. In 2009, I believe it was, state government came on board and supported and funded StudyPerth, and it became much like the organisation it is today, in terms of, one, that promotion of talking about Perth to international students, but also supporting them as well. So that's really how it came together. So it was people who are really passionate about supporting international students, and then creating an organisation that sits, it sits in between all of the universities, all of our private colleges, all of the schools, primary, secondary schools, and our TAFEs in Western Australia. So we sit and we combine with all of them. So they're all members of StudyPerth. And that sits us really nicely, because it means we have great contacts, but we can also talk to all of the students who study in Perth.
Right, right. So it's been really long that you guys started the journey, and I believe you have already helped more than 1,000 of students so far in throughout the period of time. If we talk about, great. Now, even though Perth is a great place, Australia is a great place to study, and has been in the list for many international students. However, there are certain challenges on every given point of time. Every international student has a different need, has a different set of challenges. So, what are the biggest challenges that any student needs to be prepared for if they are planning to study in Australia? If we talk about.
Mhm. I think that always the biggest challenge when you choose a place to study abroad is at the start, it's not your home, right? So you're not with your family, your friends. The culture is a little bit different. So that is always going to be, I think, to me, the biggest challenge when you choose to study abroad. I would say one of the really nice things about Perth, I guess, that helps is, one, you have an organisation like StudyPerth to support you, but also Perth is one of the most multicultural cities in Australia. So my advice is, when you arrive, it's going to be different. And that's part of the reason you choose to study in a place like Perth, is you want it to be different. You want to experience something different. You want to experience a culture that is different to yours. And you want, the best education and all these aspects. But it's a challenge because it's new. It's a totally new way of life. The way that I live in Perth is going to be the way that an international student who comes from, say, India or somewhere else around the world, when they come here, they're going to go, oh, this is different. So there's a bit of a challenge. But being a multicultural city, one of the really nice things is we have different societies. They're called diasporas, and they're collections of people from parts around the world, who have chosen Perth as a place that they live. So the really nice thing that I like about Perth is we celebrate all the different cultural events. For example, one of the biggest events we celebrate is the Lunar New Year, which has just taken place. Diwali is a very big festival as well in Perth. So these are things that are very common to students' home cultures, but they're also celebrated in Perth. So look out for events like that, because it's like that little taste of home, and that can help you feel comfortable in a new city.
True to that. Like, these kind of experiences and activities only makes it more familiar, and of course, it takes certain time for anyone to settle down. And even if I talk about, if anybody's moving within the Australia, they'll feel aloof in start, because that's not the place that they have been grown up into. So definitely, it does.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. It does. So you've already shared a kind of advice, I'll say, while answering the previous question, but still, do you have any exclusive advice for any student who's facing such challenge, or who might be planning for study abroad but has little fear in their heart that how will I settle? It's a different culture. I'll not have my family with me. I'll not have my friends. There's always this fear factor. So what advice would you give for students to overcome this kind of fear?
Mhm. The best thing I would say to students is research early and start talking to organisations like StudyPerth early. We have a really nice thing on our website. It's called a buddy program, and we have a group of ambassadors. So every year we select a new group of students, and they are representative of the different places you can study in Perth. They also have been there. They've experienced that move from their home to their new home. And so one of the really nice programs that we run is called the Buddy Program. So if you're a student, you're interested, the idea is you go onto our website, you find someone who has a similar interest, or they come from the same country as you, or they're studying the same thing as you, and you just talk to them and ask them all the questions, all the fears, all the doubts that you have, because it's their job to give you the information to help you feel more comfortable with the decision you're making. So that's probably one piece of advice I'd say. The other one is connect to our organisation and talk to your university from the moment that you go, yes, I'm going to study in Perth, because that's the best way that you can find out all the information you need to do, for things like starting to plan and find accommodation. Don't leave it last minute. Do that in advance. Start preparing yourself to come to your new city. Find out what you need to bring. What do you need to pack? What can you pack? What can't you pack? Start finding out, what's around where you live. Where can you buy some furnishings for your house? What are the tips? Is there a really nice coffee shop near where you're going to be living? Find all that stuff out in advance, because it means when you arrive, you already have some knowledge of the place that you're living, and it's just a matter of finding it then. And then when you arrive, you're, I've read about this place, I can get this here, I can get that. And an organisation like ours, we have different events, and every week there's an event that we're running. So just knowing that we exist and knowing that those events are coming up, they really help you feel comfortable in a home, because you'll meet new students, you'll make new friends. We always have StudyPerth staff around, so you can ask some of those questions that you might have, and know that you're comfortable in asking those questions, and there's someone to support you. I certainly do the same when I'm even going on a holiday or something. I research. I want to know what's around me. Where can I get help? What do I need to bring? So those are the things. Do that in advance, and look out for organisations like StudyPerth who will help you do that.
Right, right. I will say it's not brain teaser anymore. We always get this advice from everyone, whether an ex-student, whether a provider who's helping out these students in their international abroad journey. Research is the key for every answer and question that you have. Even if it doesn't justify the answer, it doesn't satisfy your query, but it gives you right, that you're well researched, so you know a little bit. But the point that you mentioned, that you should also search what kind of coffee shop is nearby, that gives you a feeling that you know the place well. If you know the place well before you land over there, it has that familiarness in you. Okay, yeah, I saw this shop. So you don't feel homesick a lot over there, because you're familiar with the place, you've already researched. So indeed, I believe the tea shop or the coffee shop one is a very good advice in the take. So thank you, Ryan, for that. I will definitely share it among with the other channels wherever I get topic, wherever I can speak on this thing. So thank you again. Now, we have already discussed about the advice, we have discussed the challenges, we have discussed how to go about it. Now comes the main part, how one should plan their study abroad journey. Like you mentioned, it's important to know what to pack, it's important to when to pack, it's important to know all the things. But it starts with, everything is, time constraint. If you don't start right now, for example, you might not be able to do it within a year or so. There needs to be specific time interval for all such activities. So if we ask you, what is the step-by-step guide for any student to apply, or for any student to plan their journey in Perth, if we talk about, what would be that?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to start with is, I'll start right at the beginning, and you may have just thought, you might be listening and you might think, yeah, I want to study overseas. You may not even have picked Australia first. So the first thing really is to understand what it is that you're wanting to do. What do you want to study? Um, I can promise you that there'll be an option in Perth. I know it 100%. There's thousands of courses that you can study in Perth. So I know we'll have a place for you. But first, I think you really need to understand what it is. What do you want out of your overseas study experience? Because that will help with the research and the planning. Once you've worked that out, then come to the StudyPerth website. We have a really nice tool. It's called Course Search. So that is where you can start your preparation for what course you may study. And the really nice thing about Perth is we have so many different options. It might be a university that's in the top 100, or it might be a TAFE course, or there's so many different options. So once you've decided on your course, and that's probably linked to the career that you want to go into in the future, then go to our course search on our website. When you come into our website, it's in the top right-hand corner. It's called course search. You click on that, type in what it is that you want to study. It might be engineering, it might be finance, it might be arts, it might be music, it might be English, whatever it might be, and start there. It will load every course and it will tell you how long the course is, how much the course will cost, where the course is delivered, if there's an online option. Some of our universities also have options where you can study in your home country first before even leaving, and then you finish your course in Australia. So it will tell you everything there is about the course. Once you've decided on your course, it will tell you how you enroll and how you contact that provider to start the course. So it's a really, really useful tool. Once you've done all of that, on our website, there's some planning around then, okay, how do I start booking flights to Western Australia? How do I start arriving? How do I find accommodation? What is it that I need to pack? So all of that is on our website and it's step by step through. So I really encourage you, course search first, then use our different sections of our website to start your planning.
Right, right. So first research yourself that which course you want to pursue, and then slowly and gradually StudyPerth is there to help you out with every step you are in need with. So definitely. Now we have discussed this earlier also. We have discussed about the Perth lifestyle. Why one should choose Western Australia over any other part of Australia, given that there's Melbourne, there's Sydney, they're very famous cities if you talk about in the world. Why one should consider Western Australia over others?
I think one of the best is probably the what we started with. You're so close to home, so we know many students who may have started in another city in Australia and are now arrived in Perth, and they flew over us getting to their city. So one of the nicest things is we're actually so close. The fact that you can call home and it may be 1-2 hours or the same time zone that you're calling from. So that's really nice because, if you're missing home, you want to be able to ring and say, hey, how is lunch happening over there? And you're eating lunch in Australia. So that's one of the really nice things. One of the other things is around, I guess, just the career opportunities. Throughout sort of the pandemic period, Western Australia was really the only state that maintained growth. So what that meant was the way our economy sort of shaped was really, really strong. So we have one of the lowest unemployment rates. And that is really good for international students because it means there are lots of jobs available in Perth. And that's a really key point of difference between us and another Australian city and some of the other parts of the world is because I know that when I went to study, I was studying because I wanted a job at the end of it. And I know many international students are the same. You may be passionate about what you're studying, but you also want a job at the end. You want a career that you can start pursuing. So one of the really nice things is there's lots of opportunities for international students. And in fact, just recently we had an event where we've launched a partnership with Seek. Students may not know Seek, but in Australia, Seek is the #1 jobs board. It's where you go to find work. So we've just launched a partnership with Seek. And this partnership is to encourage employers to advertise roles that are specifically for international students. So it's a really big point of difference. It means as a student, you can go to the Seek website, you can search using the hashtag StudyPerth, and what you'll see is jobs that are open to international students. And that's what we really want to encourage. We want to encourage more businesses to be employing international students. In addition to that, one of the other point of differences is Perth is classified regional within the migration framework in Australia. So the advantage of that is once you've finished studying in Australia, you can go on to what's called a post-study work rights visa. So this allows you to work in Australia, gives you full working rights. You can work full-time at any business in Australia. But in Perth, you have an extra year to serve. So, for example, if you study in Sydney or Melbourne, and you study a bachelor's degree, you generally get 2 years to stay in Australia to work. Whereas in Perth, you actually get 3 years. And if you're in a master's student, that goes up to 4 years. And if you're a PhD student, that goes up to 5 years. So that's really exciting because having longer to stay in Australia, and generally, if you're looking at permanent migration, on average, you're looking for about 3 years here post your studies, and then you can apply for permanent residence in Australia. And if you're looking permanent migration, having 3 years in a post-study work rights visa means that at the end of that, you can apply for your permanent residency. So it's a much easier process if you're looking to set yourself up in Australia long-term. But if you are looking to go home afterwards, 3 years of Australian work experience is going to be really great for a nice platform to then launch your career into. So that's why I would choose Perth. Purely
I
from
think it's not
from that
just,
side of things, setting yourself
yeah,
up for the rest of
it's
your
not
life.
just
Yes.
top 10. You've highlighted kind of 100 things, the best why Perth needs to be your next study abroad destination. And I was about to come on the next question, but you've already covered most of the part of it, that what kind of career support, because ultimately career is something which is the major turning point for any student or any adult who's trying to study abroad, who's trying to make their way in this whole livelihood in the whole world. So career is very important, and you guys provide career support. So you've already talked about what kind of collaboration you guys had. Now, if I want to understand, is there any kind of paid service to it?
Yeah, so we have a service available for students. So even if you're just thinking about coming to Perth, you can sign up for this service already. So it's available for prospective students as well. We call it Prosper. It's on our website. It's a career support program. It's a whole website designated to supporting your career. So I really recommend it for students. It's totally free for students to use. Once you arrive in Perth, we then have career advice and career support. So you can actually meet someone one-on-one, and they will support you in, writing your resume, having it checked, linking you with employers to be able to, make that step into finding employment. So that is a really useful service available for students as well. No cost as well, which is always nice. Because we're a firm believer, you've chosen here to study. We want to support you in your career, and it's that understanding as well that the way I apply for a job somewhere else in the world is different to how you apply in Australia. So we want to make that as easy as possible for students.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Ran. I didn't realize that we're almost near the end of our session, but I got to know so much of information, such insightful information about Parth, that I really want to continue this conversation for another 30 minutes. But I know it will be too much for you also to ask. We'll again have a second round if viewers want it. But I still have a couple of questions, so I'm going to ask it. Please allow me that. Okay. Now, there's one very important situation that is happening in Perth, not just in Perth, but across the globe, worldwide. There is a huge crisis happening with respect to accommodation. Now, Perth is also experiencing the same. What kind of measures are being placed to take care of the situation?
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. There is accommodation shortage worldwide. Everyone's found their place to live, I think, after the pandemic, and they're sort of just staying there. So it can be tricky finding accommodation. The first thing I would say to students who are listening and maybe in that sort of situation is wherever you're studying and wherever you're looking for accommodation, the earlier you can start. So the moment that you're going to go to a city, I would start early. So I think before we've all got quite comfortable with when I get there, I'll be fine. There'll be a place available. So my first piece of advice is start looking the moment you know that you're going to study in a city, whether that's Perth or anywhere around the world. Start looking the moment you know you're going to be traveling there, because it may take a little bit of time before you find the perfect place. And so that's my first piece of advice. Something that we're doing at StudyPerth is we're doing quite a few different things to I guess, open up the number of accommodation options. One of the first is we've worked with a number of hotels and other providers to open short-term accommodation, because we know that, you know, if you're located overseas and you're coming to Australia, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to find accommodation. So the first thing is, you know, you might want to just find somewhere here first, and that allows you to then go and visit, you know, some houses, some apartments, before you rent those places. So we have heavily discounted rates on our website that students can access. So that's the first thing. That's about that short-term accommodation, you know, having somewhere to stay in those first weeks
For a
that you're
short
here
period
in
of
Perth.
time.
Yep. Yep. The second part is we're working with our real estate agents and other providers as well, one of those being University Living, to push through different options. So when we hear of options opening up, we might have, you know, an apartment building that's opening, a hotel that's changing from a hotel to more longer term accommodation. So being aware of these things and providing those to those providers as well, so that they can list them on the website. So if you're going on to University Living, those sorts of listings are available for you. So that's another thing we're doing at the moment. And the other is we're working with our government. So what we're doing on the more longer term, so these are something that you won't see immediately, but something that you'll see in time, is identifying pieces of land and working with developers as well to build more what's called purpose-built student accommodation. And for Perth, you might know them as Campus Perth and the Boulevard and the Switch. So what we're looking to do is working with government to build more of these facilities, so that in, you know, a year or two, you'll start seeing some of these things under construction and coming on board. And we're having really good conversations. We've been identifying land and buildings. So one thing is to build a new building. The other is to take a building that already exists and convert it into student accommodation. So we've been identifying these things. So hopefully we'll have some more updates on those to come as well. But they're things that you'll start to see in the future. But for now, it's all around, you know,
Right.
understanding that there is accommodation available here and getting that into a space where students can find it. And you'll see all of those on our website. If you go to the accommodation page, there's a range of different options available for students to start that search, but do it early.
True, true. And the main key, of course, the remedies that you shared, that, you know, there's some collaboration going with the hotels, you guys are getting it collaborate with the providers. Those are the remedies. The best advice to go, which Ryan mentioned earlier, was to book at the earliest. As soon as you are done, that, you know, you're going to travel abroad for student study purpose, you know that you're traveling to this city. We do understand that your visas are not you know, in your hands, so you're worried that you might go, you might not go due to any reasons. So you can still get cashbacks, or, you know, there is still some process to get on the cancel fee and all that. I think you should go and check out the website policies for this. But I think there is every organization that is working right now within this environment is trying to help the student with respect to accommodation part also, because this crisis is not a joke. It is across the world. All the major part of the you know, world are getting affected because of this. So start early. If you're planning to go in 2023 in the upcoming months, book your accommodations now. Don't wait for long. Otherwise, of course, you'll have to watch, and then you'll have to see for short-term accommodations, short-term tenure. And this short-term tenure will actually be a good solution for immediate cost basis. But if you have your own space from the day one, then you'll feel more like home after a certain period of time, so that you don't have that feeling of aloofness that, okay, this is still not my place. So start early. That is the best advice, I believe. Ryan has already shared with respect to this.
And definitely too, and check frequently as well. So if you go onto a particular website and there's, you know, nothing or limited options on one day, check again later on, because the nature of renting and being in accommodation is that, you know, someone moves out and someone moves in, and that happens
Right.
constantly, and we're seeing a good turnover rate. So students who may be finding it difficult for accommodation, it's taking a little bit longer because the place that they want isn't on the market and then comes on the market. So start early and Jen check frequently.
Right. Start early and just be on little on your toes, because accommodations is really important. That's a place where you're gonna spend around your 80% of time in the entire day. That's your gonna be your home for the next years, couple of years that you're gonna stay over there. Hopefully, like maybe for lifetime if you want to settle down over there. And I believe I'm pretty sure StudyPerth has an option for that also. If you want to reach out to StudyPerth, you can just reach out to us over email and we'll connect you guys, or we'll organize a separate ULTV discussion for that. Now, this come another important aspect for anybody who's planning to study abroad. That's the cost of living. We do realize that Perth is very relaxed in nature, and still we get to cover a lot of amenities. All the things are covered into that, any kind of lifestyle. But what is the cost of living over there with respect to an international student?
Yeah, we're very lucky in Perth. We've got one of the lowest cost of livings. And one of the things we do hear from students is they say, oh, it's very different to home. The cost of living is different to home. But economies are a little bit different too. So I know I was talking to a student the other day and they said, oh, this costs more here in Perth. And I said, yes, but your salary is also more. So I always put it in the context of you can make some good money in Perth, and then things are priced accordingly. But within Australia, we're one of the lowest places cost of living. Rents are cheaper than other places in Australia. Your transport costs are cheaper. And one of the really nice things as a student is your transport, so your bus, your train, is very, very cheap. It's heavily discounted. It's usually about 70% off the standard fee. So it's really cheap. And so there's a really nice calculator on our website that you can use to work out your cost of living. It's different for everyone. So, if you're in a certain course, that's a bit different to, say, someone who's in a university course. So you can use the calculator to find out what it is that what to be prepared for on a weekly basis. But one of the really nice things is, and I always recommend to students, is if you're looking for some part-time work, that's going to be really, really valuable to offset some of those costs. But as a destination, we're one of the cheapest cities to live in Australia. And if you're living around any of our universities and in the city, there are so many great options and affordable options for buying food, for buying your groceries, and your transport is usually very cheap and it's very accessible. So you're not having to worry about, cars and petrol and all of those sorts of things, all those added things that you maybe haven't factored into when you move into a new city. But yeah, use our calculator on our website. It's a really valuable tool to help you prepare and budget before you're arriving here.
Great. Again, StudyPerth has another option for you guys that can solve your problem that you're facing right now with cost of living or when managing. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today. But before we bid adieu, we have always this tradition of asking 2 cents of advice. You have shared a lot of wisdom. You have shared a lot of advice throughout the show. But still, 2 cents of wisdom for any student who's going to, plan their study abroad journey, regardless they are going for Perth or Australia or UK or any other country.
My single probably piece of advice is find somebody who has been to Perth and ask them about the city. That is the best thing I think you can do. We know when you say Australia, people go, oh, Sydney, Melbourne. But if you find someone who's been to Perth, they will tell you it is one of the best cities they've ever been to. It has been, an amazing place to study, to visit, to be a tourist in. So find someone who's been to Perth. And if you can't find someone, come onto the StudyPerth website and you can talk to somebody who's currently in Perth. But that's my single best piece of advice, is that find someone who's been to Perth. They will give you the full picture about what it's like to be here. And I can tell you it's very, very, very likely to be a very positive one. And they're probably just working out how long it is before they can come back.
Right. So I will say the advice is that you go ahead and make a e-friend who's already living in that city where you are going, who's already studying into that university, so that they can help you and they can give you the real picture, not something which is available just on Google for you, maybe at the college and universities. So on this note, we'll be closing our session. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found it useful. Looking forward to seeing you guys next Friday at 5 p.m. on ULTV Study Abroad 1-1. Stay tuned to our social media handles for more information. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us all the way across from Perth. We had a lovely session, very informative. Looking forward to our next session really soon.